Okay.
To us, this is the perfect city council meeting.
Yeah, because that's what you like when there's not a lot of people in the audience.
Exactly. We're done.
I think we're good to go. Okay, good evening. Thank you everyone for coming. We could actually probably move everything a little closer. But you know what, the purpose of this, and we may need to do a few more to get, more community members, but the purpose of this is to get, of these listening sessions, is to get feedback from the university community on what we should be looking at specifically for our next president. We had put on our website for this search leadership criteria that was very general in nature and that we would be looking for, but we obviously want to listen to the community and get a little bit more specific in that description so that we can find somebody that truly will help bring the university forward over the next 10 years or so, which seems to be our average life, or anyways for a president. 12 years with Tom and 5 with Mark, I guess, and 30 for...
You average it out.
So the way in which we'll do this is we invite people to come to the mic. This is being live streamed, so we have to, everyone has to talk into the microphone for us to be able to hear you, but why don't I turn it over to you, Tom, to kick it off?
Sure. I don't know, should we get closer? Or are y'all okay? I guess we have to speak into a microphone. My name is Tom Fitch, and I'm with the firm Storbeck, Pimentel & Associates, and we are the search firm that's been selected by the board to assist you with this search. So I just want to tell you briefly who we are, and then listen to you, the community members. Storbeck Pimentel is a search firm that only works in higher education, or I should say education, but primarily in higher education. We're nationwide. We have offices in Philadelphia and Atlanta. Not Atlanta, that's where I live. Yeah, it's been a long day. And Los Angeles. I live in Atlanta. My colleague, Julie T., who's also a partner with the firm, had to leave. So she had another prior commitment before we even knew about this, that she had to be at. And Julie is from Richmond, Virginia. So we're thrilled to be here and assisting you with the search. I'll tell you just briefly that what a search firm does in higher education and assisting with the search, I put into 3 buckets. One is we go out and actively recruit folks that are very happy in their jobs wherever they are, have no idea they're going to be in Michigan this time next year, or at least in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We bring intelligence on those people, because otherwise you just run an ad and look at the paper and decide who to talk to. So we bring intelligence on those folks to the search committee to help, and the board to help them make decisions. And then finally, we just help make the trains run on time in terms of procedures and working with the university to have a successful appointment in the fall. So here's what I'd like to hear from you all. And I don't want to pretend like there's 100 people in the room when there's not. So the community members, I know that we have a couple of people from the university who are kind to have attended, but if I'm not mistaken, we have one community member here. So you're our person.
We're speaking to you.
Would you mind introducing yourself? And yeah. So
Marilyn, we'd love to
Yeah.
have you Marilyn Teich, just an interested party.
And what would you like to share with the board?
I don't know. I want to hear how they do this. They've done a good job.
Well, what is it you've liked about the presidents that you've seen at Grand Valley?
Longevity,
Okay.
the fact that this university has gotten really good press. I was not a Grand Valley person. I mean, I thought it was in the middle of a cornfield and wondered where to go and how. And it did, and I don't know how. But I'm proud of it and a backer because of it.
Thank you. Do we have a couple of other members of the community who's come in? Would you? That's right. That's right. Yeah, yes. Would you mind introducing? Sorry, I am Tom Fitch. I'm from Storbeck Pimentel, which is the search firm that's assisting the university in the search. And all these other folks are, we probably should have done introductions.
Yeah, we
Could
could probably do
now?
that.
These folks form the Presidential Search Advisory Committee, which will be doing the initial vetting of candidates. And you are?
I'm Peter DeWitt. I graduated in the class of 68, 50 years this year.
Wow.
I'm sitting next to my wife, Gayleen, who was a pioneer student. We've had the opportunity and really the pleasure to have had a chance to work with all of the presidents so far. They all have unique personalities, but I think that the thing that has helped to put Grand Valley on the map where it is today and give it the reputation that it has, which is well deserved, is that we have been represented to the community by leaders who have gone the extra mile to step forward and present this university in the light that it should be. There's seldom a week goes by that I don't see Tom doing a commercial on television connecting with the community. Don Lovers was and is a very unique individual, and I don't think we'd have half of what we have if he hadn't had a strong hand in the development, not only academically but monetarily, in the university that we have. I know there were a lot of people who hated to see him coming because he always had his hand out, but sometimes that's necessary, and not everybody has the ability to ask for money and get it. Far too often people are reluctant to ask for money, and then when they do, sometimes they do it in a fashion that is doomed from the start because they're almost apologetic. We have nothing to be sorry for or apologetic for. What we have is tremendous. We have the student growth and the enrollment to support just how good we are. We have the academic results of our student body to prove how good we are. And we have the enthusiasm of the students and the faculty and the staff to appreciate where we are. And I think those things all have to enter into the mix, because if we're not all working in the same goal, it's far and away too hard to get there. So the qualities that I think we're looking for in a president goes beyond somebody that's just asking for money, but is a strong authority figure, a respected individual who has earned the respect of the people he has to work with and for. You know, you have the students, you have the board of control, you have the faculty senate and the faculty and the rest of the staff, and I don't find people who are unhappy with our leadership. Tom gets out and he rubs elbows with the students, and you know, we have T. Haas. What's everybody else got? You know, and I think that these are qualities that we need to find, and we need to continue having these good qualities with us. That's why we keep coming back, and we keep giving, and we keep participating, because we value what has happened with the university. It has only added to what we received in the way of an education. And in my case, the education went far beyond book knowledge. It's people knowledge. And I've had the wonderful opportunity to get to meet many of the staff and quite a large number of individuals on the Board of Control. And it means something to me to be recognized, if but for anything other than a high Pete, to know that somewhere along the line I must have done something right. So I think we need to keep building on what we have, and we need to put a leader in the community that will keep us at the head of the class, just like what we have.
Thank-
I may later. Okay. We'll see.
We'll see. Okay.
Well, the one thing I want to say, I don't do those things. No.
People can't hear.
Oh, they can't hear. I've got a real loud voice, trust me. The one thing that I remember, okay, so I started with the college. When I started, there was no college. It was a cornfield. I'm sorry. It was a cornfield, not finished. And Dr. Zumberg was right there with us. When he announced he was resigning, and we started to do a search for our next president, which happened to be Don Lubbers. Don Lubbers actually got into my Opel. I don't know if any of you know what an Opel is. It was a $700 car that was mine. And I drove him all over the city showing him Grand Rapids, because he wasn't from Grand Rapids. And it didn't bother him at all that he was down there with me. Okay? And I think that's important. Mark Murray, T. Haas has that same personality. Okay, they are with the community. They don't put themselves up here, which they very easily could. And in our community, I think that it's, like Pete said, rubbing elbows with the neighbors. I think that's very important.
Very well said. Thank you. As you think about, I'm going to ask you, I'm picking on you because you're the pretty much.
We almost weren't. We went the wrong loose mark.
So, listen, as you think about the future of Grand Valley and who is going to lead you for the next at least 5, maybe 10, maybe more years, if they're very successful, what's the university going to be like in 5 years?
Hopefully growing completely. Into the mic. Hopefully growing completely. Keeping, I guess, how do I want to say this? Classes and degrees that are relevant to today's society. A lot of the universities now are dropping a lot of the old time, what history, things like that, and they're adding classes that are relevant to today's society, which is changing extremely rapidly. Am I saying no, drop history? No, but making it relevant to what we as a society in 10, 15, 20 years from now, we'll probably be flying cars between the buildings instead of on the streets. We need courses that are going to keep us up at that level. Innovative classes, innovative things, and a leader that sees that route.
Sure.
I can tell you what I don't want to see down the road 10, 15 years. I don't want to see Grand Valley be just a medical school. And we're growing in the medical field, and we need to, because there's a demand for that type of a skill and that education. But there's a lot more to what we are than our medical school that's very prominent and very evident in the community right now. But I don't want to see us lose the well-rounded liberal arts education that we built this place on.
Sure.
That would be terrible.
Very good. Thank you. Are there other comments from the committee or things you'd like to engage about? Thanks.
I knew I shouldn't have given Peter the microphone because you took everything I was going to say. Thanks, Peter. I'm Chris Barbie, the Director of Alumni Relations here, and one of the things that I would like to have our next president have is accountability. One of the things that has made my job easier as we go around and talk to alumni is when I'm able to pull out our accountability report and show what we have done as a university, all the good things, and some of those accountability doesn't show us in a good light too. So we're willing to put it out there for everyone to see, both good and bad. And I think that is one of the proudest things that I do when we go and meet with alumni, to let them know that we're good stewards of our money, we're trying to do things the right way, and we're showing you our results. Not all the universities in the state of Michigan do that. And so I think that's one of the, like I said, one of the proudest things that I do when I go around the country and around the state and meet with our alumni and say, hey, we're putting this out on the table, letting you know what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I hope we have a president that will continue to put our story out there in the facts and figures, not just glossy, words and things. We're showing you the facts. I think that's a powerful message that we send. The other thing I'd like to see is an approachable and not untouchable president. I think I've worked for 3 of the 4 presidents, and one of the things too, and I think I'm spoiled in this way, is you don't walk around college campuses where the college president knows your name. I can still remember where I was the first time President Lubbers called me by name. It scared the daylights out of me. That I didn't know he knew who I was. It was behind the press box up at Lubbers Stadium. And I think to walk around a college campus and to have a college president know your name, and I hear this from alums all the time that, I can't believe he knew my name or knew who I was or what I do. I think that's very, very important, as Peter was saying, rubbing the elbows and getting to know people, but getting to know them in a sincere way and not phony. That comes across very clearly when you're phony. You've got to be sincere, and I think the last 3 presidents have been very sincere, and you can tell, and people love that. Our alums love that our presidents can communicate with them one-on-one. They're not in an ivory tower, and that is appreciated by our alumni base. So that's a couple of things that I would like to see. Since I've been in this position, Our office has had the opportunity to have a good working relationship with each of the presidents, and that's important as we move forward. When I was a student, there were 7,700 students, and now I work at a university of 25,000, and to see that growth, it's been because of good leadership, and it starts at the top. And Grand Valley's been blessed with that. That's another thing that I am able to tout when we go around to our alumni receptions, is that Grand Valley is where it's at today because of the strong leadership that we've had at the top. And not a lot of universities can say that. You hear of troubles at other universities, you hear of scandals, but Grand Valley has done a tremendous job with the last three presidents, as Peter said, all with different styles, but all with the same mission and all with the same purpose to make Grand Valley as good as it can be.
Thank you. It's very well said.
Do you want to answer the same question? No? Not right now?
No. Oh, please do.
Chris, I'm going to pick on you a little, but I'll pose this to everyone. So it strikes me a little bit that we've heard a lot in the earlier session too. People have talked about approachability and being a man of the people, if you will. But as we think about the future and what the university needs, and we talk a lot about financial stability, we talk about enrollment stability, if for some reason, in order to solve those things, is it not on? Okay, sorry. If in the future, if some of the things that we need to address, like fiscal stability and enrollment stability and things, require more time of a president so that they're not able to spend as much time rubbing elbows with neighbors, do we think that's acceptable for our community or no?
I don't think that's acceptable
Okay.
because we've had presidents that have been accessible. That's all we know. And I've said this at alumni. When I thank President Haas for speaking at an event, I will say that we are spoiled because this is all we know. Because our presidents have always been there rubbing elbows, and we've been spoiled. We've had a good run with our presidents, and that would be a tough adjustment to move the other way and have presidents that weren't accessible.
I really think that accessibility creates the financial background. If you don't have accessibility and you have someone up here that's not approachable, I'm not going to give my money to somebody that won't say, hey, thank you. It doesn't have to be a lot as far as his accessibility to me, but I think it goes hand in hand. You can't have somebody here and not be accessible.
I guess part of the way I'd respond to your question is, why can't the individual we select do both? Yes, financial needs are important, but I look back at all of the times we stormed Lansing asking for more money, and we were rated at the bottom of the ladder when it came times from state support, and we had to have our hand out to the community to help support us. And at the same time, the very people that we were asking to do that, and in the leadership, our presidents, they had to fill that role as well as filling the role of being an accessible leader, an approachable leader. And I look at the difference between accessibility and approachability as two different things. And I think those are two very important qualities, and they're not the same thing in my mind. I've been able, at times when I wanted to talk to President Haas, I'd call him on the phone, he'd answer, and I'd ask if he had a few minutes of time for me, and he did, well, it's one thing to get in the office, and it's another thing to get shut down. That doesn't work. You got to have both, and it's got to be sincere. And we've been blessed with that, and I think that we need to continue to do that. Certainly, I don't want to have a person in the leadership role in the university that doesn't understand and know the complete details of our financial requirements and budgetary requirements and everything else, because he has to speak to it. He has to speak to it when he asks a donor for a large donation to the university. He has to speak to it when he talks to the legislators in Lansing or to the lawmakers in the community. I see right through it if he doesn't know it and doesn't understand it. So I look at it from the standpoint that we can't have one or the other. It's got to be both.
Well, I appreciate that, and I will be the first to say that I am in 100% agreement with you, and I hope that we can find that as well. But we've been, I think, reminded recently that the individual we may be looking for, and we've had some of them already, maybe in contemporary parlance, a bit of a unicorn. And are we, again, we will only choose the best for our university, but if it comes to a point where we have to choose between different characteristics or different strengths or maybe just varying levels of these strengths, I think it's important for this group to know what is more important to the community, or where do some of those, which do we weight more than others? And again, I think we all hope very much that we will find someone who's off the charts in every category that we're looking for, but it's helpful to know where you all stand or where folks stand if that isn't necessarily readily the case. And I'm not here to be a doomsday person, because I think we will find the best individual, but I'm just also trying to be realistic about what we're asking for someone, because we have been extraordinarily blessed with the presidents that we've had.
If you can't find Allendale on the map, we don't want him.
Others?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Let's do.
Yeah. Yeah, you're supposed to make this for TV, Matt.
Okay, Majd Al-Mallah, Professor of Modern Languages and Literatures.
Felix Ngasa, Professor of Chemistry and Chair of University Academic Senate, also Grand Valley alum.
Kate Remlinger, Professor of English.
Sherry Bauman, University Communications Assistant and a Grand Valley alum.
Mitch Watt, longtime member of the Grand Valley Foundation and big supporter of Grand Valley.
Dan Hurwitz from University Development.
Kate Walters, member of the board.
Victor Cardenas, most importantly, Grand Valley alum and also a member of the Board of Trustees.
Tom Fitch from Stolbeck Pimentel.
John Kennedy, Chairperson of the Board of Trustees.
Mary Kramer, Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees, an alum. And I wish I could, I think I started in '72, so you got me beat. But from that era, when I remember that it was really the lake halls and that was about it.
Megan Saul, Board of Trustees, and double alum. One more than Victor. For the record.
Good for you.
Sean Lancaster, Professor in Education and Chair of Literacy and Technology.
Deborah Bambini, Professor in Nursing and an alum, and have been here since '92.
Samantha Rhodes, Associate Professor of Engineering.
Kyle Caldwell with the Dorothy A. Johnson Center for Philanthropy, and I'm not an alum, but I have 2 Lakers, if that counts.
Diana Lawson, the Dean of the Seidman College of Business.
Sure. So the suggestion is we talk a little bit about the process so you'll know our calendar of what we're anticipating, and maybe that'll prompt some questions from you that we'll be happy to respond to. So we'll launch this search in May. And when I say launch, I mean we will have a document, a prospectus profile that will talk about the university, that will talk about life in Western Michigan. It'll also talk about the opportunities and challenges for a new president and some of the desired attributes and qualifications. So it'll be an 8 to 10 page document, very attractive, that we'll go to market with. We'll also advertise it in a lot of different places. In other words, announce it. And it's really, the start of a presidential search for any institution is a wonderful opportunity to tell your story nationally. You haven't had that opportunity to do it very much in your history, which is good. But this is a really nice time to go out nationwide and tell your story as we start to talk to potential candidates and prospects. And we will be doing that over the summer. And we'll be meeting with the search committee at least one point in the summer. It's kind of a check-in point, taking a look at some CVs, resumes, and prospects and getting their feedback, kind of level setting how we're doing in terms of contacting folks and attracting interest. And then in the fall, in the September timeframe, we'll start interviewing. And there will be a couple of different stages in the interview process. The idea is that by December, there will be an announcement of a new president. Now, one of the things I will tell you that we do, just so you know, and you can tell others in the community if they ask about this, this is what is called a confidential search. So what that means is you will not be reading in the newspaper, we hope, who the candidates are until you know who is getting the position. The reason for that is if we're going to attract attention from sitting presidents, which we will, but if they know their name is going to be revealed in the press before they have the job, then they're simply not going to apply, or they're not going to let us use their name. So the reason, and it's very common in presidential searches now nationwide, both public and private institutions, to do it this way. People may say, well, gee, why aren't we finding out about this, and why can't we know? That is the reason, so that we can attract a better, higher quality pool. And I will just say that there are states in the country where you can't do that. Florida, Ohio, North Dakota, some states where they have a hard time attracting I'm not saying there aren't any high quality presidents in Florida, but they do have a hard time attracting high quality because of that. They can't, everything has to be entirely open. So.
There aren't any in Ohio.
This is the, that's correct. Yep.
I'm a member of the search committee.
Yeah. That's right.
We're the advisory.
Yes. So.
Yeah, the selection, the final selection is made by the committee of the whole, the Board of Trustees.
And when we say confidential, that doesn't mean that nobody will know but the board. There will be selected people, the president's cabinet and folks like that, that would meet with a few of a very small select number of the finalists. So it's not like it's not entirely closed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any further comments from anyone?
Comments or questions?
I'll tell you folks from the community, in all the advertising, and this will be very widely available, there is an email address that will be accessible to everybody on the campus, and we can share that. It's GVSU president at the name of my firm, storbecksearch.com. But we can share that widely. Happy to share it with people in the community. If you want to give us feedback, if people who weren't able to make it tonight want to give us feedback, we're more than happy to receive it through that email would be the best place.
How many of these are you having?
We are having 4. We had one this afternoon here in this same room for the university community. Tomorrow we're doing 2 in Allendale.
Not going to any off-site areas?
Not at this stage.
I think we are going to probably look to expand, do some more community sessions to get more of the community input. Because I mean, I think one of the unique things about Grand Valley is really in addition to being a school with a lot of alumni now, it's really a community asset, and so we really want to look to get a broader feeling from the community about what we're trying to find.
Probably a question you can't answer, but do you have prospects already in mind?
Sure.
Or you just put it out and say, hey?
Yep, we absolutely, no, you're right, and we can't tell you who they are,
Right.
but we absolutely do. Yes.
Okay.
We've already been talking about that, and we'll receive nominations from people all over the country, and certainly Grand Valley people who have an interest.
They don't want you, yes.
We have a volunteer.
Well, thank you very much. I think we're, yep.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other comments or feedback at this time?
Tell them about the website.
You want to give the
Well, there is, on the GVSU website, there is a presidential search page, which will keep you updated on what's happening. It has a list, I think, of the board resolution that authorized this and talks about the leadership qualities we'll be looking for. It also has I think has a list of the search committee members, doesn't it? So everything is going to be, everything is out there that you would need to see, including the profile. Once we have that completed in May, that'll be posted there. The advertising will be posted there. So that will be kind of one place where you can really go. And the email address I was just telling you about will certainly be there. So would love to continue to have comments from the community. Thank you for taking your time tonight.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
We're adjourned.
Yeah.
Well, listen, they have an opportunity. If you didn't do this, you'd hear about it.
Right.
So the important thing is there was an opportunity, and honestly, it's not relative. It speaks well for you.
Yeah, I think the only thing I worry about is, like, I did not see the